water.
Scotty B going to work in the paint.
Eastern Conference Final. New NBA champion. And it's a team from Toronto, Canada. We, the North, are now we, the champions.
What is going on, Raptors Nation? It is Luca here, back with the Raptors Nation podcast. Hope you're all doing well. The OKC Thunder advanced to the NBA Finals. Two Canadians going to the finals, and Shea and J-Dub, as they await their opponent. Will the Pacers punch its ticket to the NBA Finals for the first time since 2000, or will the Knicks make it a series? Of course, New York down 3-1. Pascal Siakam, one more win away from returning back to the NBA Finals, winning it with the Raptors in 2019. In today's show, we do got some interesting things to talk about. I think it's going to make for a fun conversation, what I got in store for all of you. We're going to talk Giannis to Toronto, the potential of that. I'm going to be taking a look at a Brandon Ingram hate tweet, if you will, that has me thinking if people are actually being legit with their take on Brandon Ingram with the Raptors. And then to end the show, I'm going to give you guys my ideal draft pick. Of course, the NBA draft, it is nearing. I mean, we're almost there. Still some time to go. June 25th is the NBA draft. So the Raptors, who will they ultimately take at number 9? Will they trade the number 9 pick before then? All that is, of course, in play. So, yeah, we're going to have a fun one today, guys. Do me a solid. Drop a like on the video. Sub to the channel for more pods just like this. The Raptors Nation podcast coming to you every single Thursday. Going to have more content on this channel in the coming weeks. So, definitely be on the lookout for that. But we begin today's show by talking about Giannis to Toronto. And honestly, guys, I didn't plan on doing a Giannis segment for today, but there was something that caught my attention and I made a take, and I just wanted to bring it here and further discuss it. So there was a segment this morning on ESPN's Get Up, and Brian Windhorst said the move for Giannis, if he has the control, is to go to the East. So why is this significant for the Raptors? Because remember, there was that report that caught social media by storm a few weeks ago. Scoop B. Robinson saying that, you know, the Brooklyn Nets and the Raptors, they would be the two teams to look out for because Giannis wants to stay in the East. Well, this kind of validates that, I would think. Like, it makes it have more truth to it. All of a sudden, that report, it's like maybe Brandon Robinson was onto something. Maybe there is some validity to what was said, and maybe the Brooklyn Nets and the Raptors would be two teams in play. Now, it is important to note that Windhorst didn't mention the Raptors, didn't mention the Nets. He mentioned the Boston Celtics and New York Knicks. You would think both teams would be in play for Giannis just because of what they have, what they can surrender. Because I think the big thing here in a potential Giannis trade, if he does want to stay in the East and have control, is he wants to go to a team that is not going to be absolutely depleted after they trade for him. Like, he wants to go to a team that even after they make the move for him, they're going to be a contender in the East. And really, it makes sense even from the perspective of why would Giannis want to go to the West? The West is insanely tough. There's going to be 12 teams trying to get 10 spots next season. Like, it is going to be stacked. It was already stacked. It's only going to get even more stacked. The Spurs are going to be good. You got Cooper Flag now on the Mavericks. Who knows what other player movement's going to happen? Where's KD going to go? I think it's ultimately going to be the Rockets or even Minnesota. So why would Giannis want to go to the West, which is right now the Royal Rumble? Like, it is next to impossible to get on out with how stacked it is. I mean, OKC, they're building a dynasty. They're going to have draft picks even after potentially win the title. So if you're Giannis, yeah, you want to stay in the East because the East is weak. It's going to be no Tatum for all of next season. And then really, you got the New York Knicks and Indiana Pacers. Outside of that, Cleveland hasn't proven to being legit. I mean, they were a second-round exit. Detroit, I think that's an interesting team. it's funny how they pushed the Knicks there. Who knows what would happen if Detroit ends up beating the Knicks? Maybe we're looking at a Pacers, Pistons, Eastern Conference Finals right now. But then outside of those teams, nobody really strikes fear. Like Orlando, yeah, they could be back. Atlanta's kind of in the middle. You don't know what to expect from them. There's some other teams that have question marks, right? So if I'm Giannis, I definitely want to stay in the East because that is your best chance of winning when you know the West is just a gauntlet. So with that being said, I think if Giannis actually wants to remain in the East, yes, the Knicks are definitely going to be there. Yes, the Celtics are definitely going to be in that conversation. Two teams that Wendy brought up. But the Toronto Raptors will definitely be a part of that list because of Masai's connection to Giannis. If this is all true, the Raptors, we know they are always a sleeper, it seems, when it comes to getting a big name. I know they don't end up getting that big name, but a couple of summers ago, it was the summer of Kevin Durant. Then it was the summer of Damian Lillard. If Giannis requests that trade and he wants to remain in the East, the Raptors will be a part of these conversations. And then that begs the question, if there is interest from the Raptors and Masai Ujiri and Giannis is available, what would the Raptors be able to trade? And even after making that trade, would that team still be good enough to contend in the East, which is the big piece in all of this? So let's bring this up. This is what I mentioned on X today. If the Raptors trade for Giannis, a mock trade I have, and this is something that I've brought up on this pod in the past, Scotty Barnes, Grady Dick, Abaji, plus 3 first-round picks. That would likely include the Raptors' 2025 first-round pick, which is number 9, and then 2 others that would be in future. So if the Raptors make that trade, which I think is good value, like if you're the Bucks, you're going to have enticing offers from the Western Conference teams. But if Giannis wants to stay in the East, this is as good of an offer that the East can produce. Like this is going to be a better offer than the Nets. If the Celtics are at play, are they really going to trade JB or Tatum? I don't know if they would. Maybe JB, if they want to include him, that makes things interesting. And then the New York Knicks would probably have to trade what? Like Cat and one of Anunoby or Bridges. The Raptors offer, this Raptors offer, I think, would still be among the best ones that can be offered. Like you're talking about getting Scotty Barnes back, who then all of a sudden Milwaukee can build their future around. Like he's 23. You still don't know how much better Barnes can become. Grady Dick's a solid young player that still has tremendous upside. Abaji too is young, and then those 3 first-round picks. So I think this is fair value. I really do. I think this is. So let's just say this is the Raptors offer. Masai pulls it off, and the Raptors land Giannis. Well, even after that trade, as I point out here, they still have Quickly, Barrett, Ingram, Giannis, and Pirtle. And then you got your second unit with Shed, Walter, Mobo. So obviously, you got to fix up this bench. But with that starting 5, with those bench pieces, if you go out and fix this bench, is this enough to compete in the Eastern Conference? Let me know down below. Now, here's the thing. The Raptors, if they pull this off, they still need to work on this roster, as I just said. So, for instance, I would think you would need to get, stretch big. You would need that. Like, not to say you're trading Pirtle, you keep him, but you would need a stretch big on this roster to have in lineups with Giannis. It just makes sense. So, hey, maybe you bring back Chris Boucher on a cheap team-friendly deal. He's a veteran. He's going to likely be headed to a team that's looking to win now. And then you go out there and sign a veteran wing, a guy who can shoot. It's funny, Gary Trent Jr. is going to be a free agent. Is he willing to come back on a cheap deal? Obviously, like his stock and value has gone down significantly. But basically, you would have to get, you would have to work that bench. You would have to go out and sign some veteran guys. Again, maybe you bring back Boucher, you go out and sign a veteran wing, just a guy who could shoot, get some more shooting in this rotation. But just looking at it, like, I think this would be very interesting. And I think this team can compete in the East. I do. there's question marks, of course. The biggest being Brandon Ingram's health. Can he return or resemble that all-star Brandon Ingram that we saw a couple years ago? But, if Ingram really gives you his best version, you know what Giannis is going to give you? He's a top 3 player. He's a top 3 player in this game. Right now, it's Jokic, Shea, Giannis. When talking about the 3 best players in the league. Barrett is coming off a huge year, a career year. Just saw all of his averages uptick. And then the other big question, along with the Ingram health, in my opinion, would be Emmanuel Quickley. Is he ready to take that next step? Because right now, there's been some nasty conversations had about Quickley. I know some fans are already done with him. They want to part ways with him. I've seen Quickley regarded as one of the worst point guards in the league and just some of the tier rankings that I've seen online. So Emmanuel Quickley PR is at an all-time low right now. He's got to have a big season. He's got to prove that he can be this team's point guard, that he can organize things, that he can be efficient, effective. But you look at that 5, at first glimpse, what gets me all giddy and just optimistic that this can work is you're pairing Giannis with BI. Like, I think I'm higher on BI than a lot of people, but you can't tell me that is not going to be one of the best duos in the East, if not the best, because again, no Tatum. That could very well be the best duo in the East. I think they complement each other so well. Ingram, a guy who could space the floor, shoot, and Giannis, who, again, remember what he said. He wants to play more point forward. He wants to play more like Scotty Barnes, why it does make sense that you would trade Barnes in this scenario and not Ingram, because Giannis is a lot like Barnes with their game, whereas Ingram, he's more complementary to that. I think it would be way too clunky, way too much of the same type of player if you have Giannis and Barnes. And I think for the Raptors, you definitely got to part ways with Barnes or Ingram if you want to get a Giannis trade done. I don't see the Bucks taking any other offer. I know I've seen RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley thrown out there. They're not going to take the OG trade package for Giannis. Again, guys, we're talking about a top 3 player in the NBA. You're going to have to pay up a ton. There's even the argument to be made. Maybe it's Scotty and RJ instead of, and then you keep Grady and Abaji in that situation. That's at play too. But this is my offer. If I had to make a pitch, if I had to make an offer for Giannis Antetokounmpo, this is my offer. This is the trade that I'm willing to make if I'm in charge of the Toronto Raptors. And again, even after this trade, I think this is still an enticing team and a good enough team if you factor in the work that needs to be done with this roster, because this is no complete team by any means. But I'm saying if you then go out and get some of the key guys, key pieces that you need, some more shooting, veteran play, a stretch big, this rotation, this team, it can contend in the East when Boston's not going to have Tatum, and then you just have New York and Indiana. Cleveland doesn't scare me. We know they got their limitations. So yeah, really, it's the Knicks and Pacers in my opinion. And of course, Boston, but minus Tatum is going to be huge. But we don't know what work they're going to do to their roster. Maybe they're the ones that end up with Giannis. But the point I'm trying to make is there is a path where the Eastern Conference is wide open, where if the Raptors get aggressive, expedite this rebuild, expedite this timeline and say, hey, we want to go for it. We have this opportunity because we just traded for Ingram, who's in his prime, 27. We can come up with a compelling offer for Giannis. Let's go all in. Let's get Giannis, a guy who's 30, a guy who I think at least has 5 more great seasons ahead of him. And you see if you can take advantage of a weak East like you did 6 years ago when you traded for Kawhi Leonard. And we all know how that played out. So is Masai willing to take another gamble, take another chance, and make something happen here? I think this offer is fair. I think it would be among some of the best offers, especially in the East. We're not talking about the West here, because according to this, Giannis would want to stay in the East. And even after the trade, I think this can be a good enough roster to do some damage. So let me know your thoughts, guys. Are you making this trade? Do you think it's worth it to go all in for Giannis? Do you think this trade moves the needle for the Raptors and they are a contender after, let me know your thoughts down below. All right, guys. So there is another thing that I wanted to share here, and it's going based on the Brandon Ingram stuff, because of course Brandon Ingram is in the mix with the Toronto Raptors. They made that trade, and they are expecting that Ingram can return to his old self, that Ingram can be that player that pushes the Raptors over the top. Now we're getting out of the whole like hypothetical trade for Giannis. I'm just talking about this current Raptors team now. Let's just say they make no trade. They're running it as is. The expectation is that Brandon Ingram is going to play at an all-star type level, and he and Scottie Barnes are going to work great. And this Raptors team, they're going to be going for it. They're going to be trying to compete. I'm not saying, they're going to have title expectations. They're certainly not, but they're going to have, I would say, playoff expectations. I just said a minute ago, the East is weak. Outside of 3 or 4 teams, there's an opportunity to leapfrog into number 5, number 6 in this conference. So you would think the Raptors, first they got to, get into that play-in before they can jump into the playoffs. But we just saw a team in the Detroit Pistons take that giant leap. I think the Raptors can have a similar path if all goes well. Now, what I want to bring on here is this tweet that was put out there, and it got a lot of traction. And I wasn't going to talk about this, but I see it get 1.3 million views and 14K likes on X. Like, this is clearly a troll tweet, rage bait, if you will. But the amount of likes it's got and just views and everything is just insane to me. And obviously you see all these shares because people are bookmarks because people want to come back to this and prove this guy wrong. And this guy's username is Will Nets Hater. So obviously, being a Nets fan, he probably really dislikes the Toronto Raptors. But this post got my attention because, I mean, it's funny. It really is. He's like, once a week, I remember the Raptors traded for Brandon Ingram and laugh. So then it got me thinking, like, do people actually think like Brandon Ingram is washed? Like, I know Brandon Ingram's stock is at an all-time low coming off the injury history. Of course, he was expected to do more with the Pelicans. Like, he was expected to be their guy next to Zion. That's how I looked at it. I thought Ingram and Zion were going to be a formidable duo, and the Pelicans were going to be a lot better than they ultimately were. But it's funny how like a lot of people, and I've noticed this with just like online chatter, are not high on Ingram. Like, they are down on him. And it's like, for this guy to make this post, again, it is rage bait, but for so many people to like it, it got me a little bit confused. So let me remind everybody just how good Brandon Ingram is when he's healthy and how good he can become. Like, Brandon Ingram, he's a former All-Star, and he's actually one of 6 players to average 20 plus points, 5 plus rebounds, and 5 plus assists in each of the last 4 seasons. So he's in elusive company there with the likes of LaMelo Ball, Luca Doncic, LeBron James, Nikola Jokic, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. When he is healthy, he is one of the best pure scorers. He's a versatile wing. Defensively, I think he doesn't get enough credit. Like, I'm not saying he's an outstanding defender, but I think he's an average defender and does a good enough job when he's locked in. So the Raptors are getting a guy in Ingram. They're getting somebody who, is a part of that short list of players to average, again, 25, 5, and 5. And a guy who was an all-star. Of course, it was many years ago, but he's capable of hitting that standard. And he's also in his prime. He's 27 years old. In theory, his best days are ahead of him. But the one thing that really made me laugh is like, how can you really say this when you take in what the Raptors got Brandon Ingram for? They got Brandon Ingram, guys, for Bruce Brown, who's declined, Kelly Olynyk, the Pacers' 2026 first-round pick, which isn't going to be a high pick because the Pacers are not going to fall off in a year. They're going to be good next season. And a second-rounder. That's a bag of chips and a can of pop. The deal was always good for Ingram. I thought it was always a slam dunk deal. The only thing that was confusing at that time and why I was a little bit skeptical at the time wasn't the deal itself, was just what are the Raptors thinking? What is their direction? Because I thought once they traded for Ingram, he was going to play right away. And that was going to hurt the Raptors draft lottery odds and draft lottery position. But of course, that didn't happen. They shut Ingram down, which was the right move. Now, it didn't really make a difference in hindsight because the Raptors weren't able to get higher up and they end up with the number 9 pick. But that's where I had my doubts. I just thought, are the Raptors really going to try to save this season and play Ingram right away and push for the play-in when they should just try to tank and get themselves the highest possible draft pick that they can? But I had no doubt with the deal itself. Like, this is a home run trade. You get a former All-Star who's 27, a guy who puts up the averages that he does, a guy who's going to instantly improve and help your half-court offense issues for the package I just said. Literally, you're not giving up anything of substance. That 2026 Pacers pick, I doubt it's going to be a game-changing pick. And then with all due respect to Bruce Brown and Kelly Olynyk, it's Bruce Brown and freaking Kelly Olynyk for Brandon Ingram. So, again, how much this is trolling? It's probably a lot of it. Whenever you see a funny tweet, you probably just like it out of natural impulse. But I've seen kind of the narratives out there. I feel like Brandon Ingram's stock is at an all-time low, and he's being heavily slept on. And the only way to restock that is if he goes out there and he has a big season for the Raptors and he proves that he is still one of those premier wings in this game. He can still be that guy. Because I certainly think he's going to have such a big opportunity here. Maybe he was lost in the shuffle. The identity of what the Pelicans were trying to do was always Dame Zion's team, never Brandon Ingram's team. He just emerged as the best player on that team during that time just because Zion was always injured. But going into this situation, I think it's clear BI is that guy. He is this team's number 1 over Scottie. That is a known thing. Like, Scottie is still the, positioned as the face of the franchise, building around him. But I think we're quickly going to see this is going to be Brandon Ingram's team. He's going to take the reins offensively, that is. Scottie's still going to be huge defensively. He's going to be that defensive anchor. But I'm talking about the guy who you go to in late game situations when you need a bucket, the go-to guy. We're quickly going to see this is going to be Brandon Ingram. This is going to be the guy with the ball in his hands late in games. The Raptors haven't had a player like this since Kawhi. A definitive go-to option down the stretch. So I'm excited about Brandon Ingram. The more I've been thinking about it, just like it sat with me. I know they've paid him what they paid him, but I think this is going to be, it definitely is a gamble. There's question marks. There's a risk because of his injury history. But really, considering what the Raptors gave up, even if things don't pan out, they didn't necessarily, screw it up completely because the trade for Ingram was actually very good for them. In hindsight, I mean, the Siakam haul will look absolutely terrible if the Ingram piece doesn't pan out. But in this particular transaction, even if Brandon Ingram doesn't work out, the Raptors didn't pay a whole ton for him. So that is why when you look at it, it's a risk the Raptors were willing to take, and it's a risk they should have taken, and they did. And Masai, give him credit. When he has an opportunity to pull something off like this, he does just that. So we will see how Brandon Ingram ultimately ends up with this team. But yeah, just wanted to talk about that. I thought that was funny. But let me know, guys. What do you think of that? Do you think Brandon Ingram's going to have a big season? Do you think he's going to bounce back in a big way? Let me know your thoughts. And finally, guys, the last thing I want to talk about is just give you my ideal pick for the upcoming draft. Not going to spend too much time with this, but of course, the NBA draft, it is, fast approaching. And the Raptors, they do have number 9. So obviously different mock drafts have come out, different opinions, and I think a whole nother slate of mock drafts are going to come out soon because usually there are new mock drafts to begin the week at the start of every week. But Basically, my ideal Raptors pick, and it would be a no doubt about him, no brainer if he's still there, which I don't think he's going to be there, but I'm going to just tell you anyway. It's Malawak. I've said it before. I'll say it again. If Malawak is still on the board, I am taking him without hesitation. I think he fits an immediate need for this team. They need a backup big, and I really am sold with his defensive potential. I think Malawak would be a nice fit with the Toronto Raptors, and he's a player the Raptors like. So I think if Malawak is there, somehow he falls to number 9, the Raptors take him, and I'm all in on that pick. Like, that is my pick. But if it's not Malawak, a player that I've started to really grow onto and really be open to the idea of drafting him is Carter Bryant. Like, this dude, he's a 3-and-D wing. That's something the Raptors need on this team. And, he's somebody who obviously has to work or show you that he can be consistent with that shooting, but he's even a guy that maybe can even replace RJ down the line. If the Raptors, again, they don't go the whole Giannis route, make that big trade, I think the Raptors are going to make a trade regardless. Like, they're going to have to figure out what happens with RJ Barrett. Like, I think he's the likeliest trade candidate on this team if the Raptors don't go that Giannis trade route. And you look at Bryant, he did only shoot 37.1% from last year, but it wasn't on big volume. I really like his jump shot. Just like his form tells me that he can get a lot better with that shot. Shot at 69.5% from the free throw line. So there's definitely hesitation with him just because, like, if that shooting doesn't come around, then you run into issues. But he's still an intriguing prospect to me where if that shooting does come along in his game, he definitely has long-term potential and he would be a long-term fit on this team. The Raptors need a 3-and-D type guy, and he kind of fits that threshold, that mold of maybe he can become that. So that would be basically where I stand right now. Like, Malawak's my definitive. Carter Bryant, I would pick amongst some of the other names that have been thrown at us. Yeah, so that's kind of where I stand. But let me know, like, what would be your ideal Raptors pick? Like, I'm talking, when I say ideal, I mean like in a perfect world. Like, perfect world, the draft board goes according to plan for you. Everything falls into place. Who is your ideal pick? And then who's your second favorite pick after that? Again, for me, it's Malawak. And then if it's not him, I'm going Carter Bryant over the likes of other names that have been thrown the Raptors' way at this spot. Derek Queen, Knipple, Colin Murray Boyles, Dekachonis. There's been some names, right? There's been a lot of players. A Sengu that have been in this particular spot slated to go to the Toronto Raptors. So just wanted to end with that. Let me know your thoughts, guys. Who's your ideal pick? Who's your pick after that? And just let me know your thoughts on anything that was talked about today. A lot of fun stuff in today's show. So I hope you all enjoyed it. Anyways, guys, be sure to follow me on X at Luca Rosano 3. Again, this pod coming to you every single Thursday. Drop a like and subscribe before you get out of here. And thank you so much for watching and listening on Apple, iTunes, and Spotify. Go leave us a 5-star review over there if you haven't already. That is it for me. It's Luke signing off. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay safe.